Wonderful. Welcome everyone to Taking the Leap, how to transfer your skills from one role to the next. I'm so excited to be able to share some of my experiences with you and to also listen and learn from my co-panelist, Kathleen Mitford. We have much to share, so I won't delay and we'll get started. Please, Kathleen, would you be so kind as to introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, well, I am so excited, Etosha, to be here with you and the audience talking about my career journey and what I've learned from it. I've been in the tech industry for over 30 years, and I am currently the Corporate Vice President of Industry Marketing at Microsoft, where I lead their global industry marketing team. I've been at Microsoft just for about 2 years, so I can also talk a little bit about what it's like to join a new company during the pandemic. And I'll share more about my career experience throughout the session. But I'm really excited to be here with the audience today and talking about all the different roles that I had and what made me feel comfortable on taking that leap. And Tasha, hearing from you as well. Maybe you want to start by talking a little bit about what you do today and how you got to where you are.
Sure, I would love to. So I am the Chief Marketing and Solutions Officer for the spend management business at SAP. I've been back at SAP for 2 years. I left for 2 years, and talking about changing companies, I left 2 years ago, or almost 3 years ago now, and went to Capital One. I decided to try banking in a sales role. And prior to going to Capital One, I was at SAP. I've been in technology for 20 years. Before that, I was in consumer goods with Procter & Gamble in procurement. And I've had quite a diverse career path that includes being a stay-at-home mom and a go at being an entrepreneur. So I'm also excited to share a little bit about my career journey, the different points where I made a conscious decision to take a leap and how that paid out for me. I know that's a scary conversation and a scary thought, whether that's leaping from corporate to entrepreneur, if that's leaping from entrepreneur to corporate, or if that's just changing companies, which is also a big deal. So I'm looking forward to talking about that. And maybe, Kathleen, I know being a corporate vice president at Microsoft is quite an accomplishment. It's not an easy path to get there. Maybe we start with you sharing a little bit about how did that happen? How did you get here? What steps did you take, and maybe some of the big leaps you made that helped you along the way?
Yes, absolutely. So I've had a very windy career. So believe it or not, I started my career as a fashion designer. So ever since the time I was 7 years old and playing with fashion plates, I wanted to be a designer. And I thought that was going to be the path I would be on for, the rest of my working career. So I went to school for fashion design, and right out of college moved to the New York area and became a head designer for a menswear company. And that was a great experience for me, where I got to travel the world, and being a head designer, I got to, go see the factories and see how the garments were made, got to deal with all of the major retail companies. And then the company I was working for asked me, my first leap, would I be interested in leading a technology implementation? And I've always loved technology. They asked me because I was the youngest person in the department and just out of college. So they're like, oh, okay, you know more about technology than the rest of us. So, so then I implemented a technology solution, and the software company said, you spend so much time on the phone with us telling us what our technology should do. Why don't you come and work for us? So that was, a leap from, my first leap was like, oh, am I going to do this? It's within my current role, working on technology versus design. And then I took a leap to work for a startup technology company, where this is really where I learned the technology industry. So I went in as product management, but had a great opportunity to help them set up an office in China. So I learned a lot about development. Then from there, I took my next leap to a company
I'm sorry, Kathleen, before you go there, maybe if I may interrupt, maybe share for the audience, what gave you confidence? That's huge, right? It's one thing, I totally get you were in fashion, and then they said, hey, we're doing this project and you have more technology than within your own company. But to leave that industry that you had been thinking about since you were 7, you said, and to go to a startup tech company, maybe share, like, what gave you the confidence? What made you feel I can do this? That may be helpful for some that's listening today.
Yeah, one thing that I always tell mentees that I work with is you need to have confidence in yourself. So I've always, since starting in my career, have looked at what are my strengths and focusing on what's different about me than anybody else that could do this role. So when I was taking that leap, going to the technology company, that technology company didn't have anybody that understood fashion, and they were selling it into retailers. So I was able to say, I may not be an expert in technology, but I am an expert in fashion. So really focusing on my strengths rather than, oh my gosh, I don't actually know the technology industry that well. So rather than telling myself that story, the story I told myself was, the fashion industry better than anybody at this company I was leaping to. So that is something that helps me, take that leap, but then also every leap since then, because I've had, as I said, getting into technology, you would think, oh, okay, you're going into product management. But when I was at PTC, where I left 2 years ago before coming to Microsoft, I started in product management. I was in corporate strategy. I led their 2,000 person engineering team. I led partnerships, I led acquisitions, I led education strategy, I led industry, I led corporate marketing, I led events, AR, PR, all roles that I wasn't technically trained for, but really kept an open mind about the opportunity and what were my strengths that I could bring to that role. How about you, Etosha? Where have you taken some leaps? Because I know you have taken a lot of leaps in your career.
And it's so funny, Kathleen, because it's so similar. I think I came out of college taking a leap. I went to school for actuarial science and I loved it. My brain is built this way. I'm a math person, at least I used to be. And but I decided that I didn't want to go into the field. Really, if I'm 100% honest and transparent, it's because I always wanted to be a mom. And since I was 12, I wanted to be a mom. That was when I decided I was going to have children. And when I was interning as an actuary, the women that I met that were successful, it was interesting, it was sort of bifurcated. They either married their high school or college sweetheart, or they weren't married. Because to become a fellow of the Society of Actuaries, you have like 8 years of studying after school, but that's all you do. And I just didn't see, I wasn't marrying my high school and college sweetheart. That was an absolute hard stop. And so and I was worried. I was thinking maybe I want to be able to have more of a focus on relationship and career. So that was the first leap. I took a leap of faith that I could have it all, so to speak. And I didn't go to, I didn't accept the job as actuary. And instead, I did something completely different. I went to Procter & Gamble in procurement. And ironically enough, I met my husband in new hire training. And so it paid out. But that was my first leap. And for that, it wasn't about skills, right? It was more about I had faith in myself that I was smart enough to figure it out. And I wanted to try to create an environment that worked for me in all levels. And then some of the other leaps I made, so I went from P&G, and similar to you, they were rolling out a system, this little system called SAP. And that math brain kicked in and I got it. And I was given the opportunity to join the rollout team to be the procurement subject matter expert, which I was like, I'm not in IT. And then when they asked me, I was like, just to be clear, I'm not a techie, I'm not in IT. But what I learned is that, and I didn't learn it beforehand. I took the job because I thought, similar to you, I know procurement, I can help procurement understand this system. What I learned though is by taking that leap, I discovered a new talent, and that is being able to understand technology and translate it for the layperson, the business person, the warehouse person, to where it makes sense and where we can get user adoption. And that really fueled my career change into technology. But I came into tech being a program manager in deployment. I left Procter & Gamble and I went to a startup, leap from 110,000 very secure person to employee number 54 at a startup in California. Quite a leap. But I went there, it's very similar to you, Kathleen. I knew that I could bring to them the experience of supply chain and procurement. And they were an electronic invoice and payment presentment company looking for that expertise to be able to work with customers. So there's several leaps. And then I would say, just to make it concise, I leapt from the small company doing customer facing work. I was account management. I did sales. I did operations, strategy, general management. And here I'm now in marketing. And I would have never imagined running marketing and solutions. But I'm here. I love it. It's something I find that I can bring a lot of experience to. And, I continue to tell myself, everything I've learned before is in my toolbox that I can take to the next step. And I guess I missed some pretty important parts in there. If I talk about leaps, one is when I had my children, I left the startup, I had my daughter, and I decided to stay home for a few years. I was home for 3 years. So I leapt into being a stay-at-home mother. And from there, I leapt into entrepreneurship, and I had my own business for 2 years. And that was quite an interesting time. I used everything that I had from business school, Procter & Gamble, undergrad, friends and family to get my business to a point where, I thought it was doing well. And then I found myself pregnant again, and I decided I couldn't handle both. And I decided to leave the world of entrepreneurship. And once my son was old enough, I leapt back into corporate America. What I'll tell you is, as I was starting to say, all of these experiences, the way I look at it is, it just helps me have a well-rounded toolbox. And I can take that toolbox and apply it to any opportunity in front of me, any. I believe I could do anything. I believe I could be a brain surgeon if they needed me, right? And they gave me the right opportunity, because I have skills, I have critical thinking, I have communication, I have curiosity. And so the way I look at my career and taking the leap is about, what skills do I have in my toolbox that are ready? What skills do I have that may be a little rusty that I need to sharpen? And then why am I doing this? Am I going to acquire new skills to add to that toolbox? And that's what I want to lean into, growing my skill set. I've really been able to drive my career. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. I love that, Etosha, and I love all the different leaps that you've had, and talking about what's in your toolbox, and really building out that toolbox. That is also one of the things, often when people ask me, hey, how are you able to do so many different roles? You mentioned curiosity. I'm a self-learner. I'm curious, and I'm a self-learner. And I'm not sure if I'd be able to be a brain surgeon, maybe, but there are so many tools to help you learn a new craft. For me, I remember on the treadmill when I was told I was going to be leading the engineering organization, and I didn't know how to code. I know I've never had to code, but reading the DevOps handbook, listening to it on an Audible book while I'm running, because I really wanted to understand the processes, the teams. So things like using your curiosity to figure out how to learn new things, whether it's listening to books, whether it's taking online classes in the evening. Most critically for me is talking to other people, both within the company and then also beyond the company. We were talking in the prep about your network and being able to use, that network, because you're never in it alone. If you look at the most successful executives and leaders, I believe that they really lean on the network. They lean on figuring out how to learn from others, and then also to make sure that they have a well-rounded toolbox. If you think about an electrician, he's not going to go on to a job without all the right tools. So one of the other things that I did early in my career is set goals for myself. And the goals I never said, hey, someday Kathleen wants to be the CVP of industry marketing at Microsoft. I never would have, it's 20 years, 30 years, say that's where I'm going to end up when I'm 50 years old. But your goals can be different. Early in my career, I did have goals within the roles that I was in, that, okay, I'm starting at manager. I want to stay within product management and get to be a director, and then a vice president, and then lead, kind of all of it. But others of it could just be about, what level do I want to be? Do I want to be managing people? Do I want to be managing a global team? And also it could just be different types of skills. So those are some of the things that keep me motivated, that keep me interested in learning new things. But how about for you, Etosha? What are some of the things that you've done in helping you prepare yourself to take on unexpected roles? And unexpected roles are even things like motherhood and, being an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think exactly, Kathleen, it's right. And your intrinsic motivations are super important, right? So, and curiosity is one that we share. And when I think about my days as being an entrepreneur, I had to lean so far into being curious and having the mindset, I can figure this out, because it's so daunting. It's not like when you're in corporate America, which is where I started my career, in a big company at that, where you have so many resources. When I was an entrepreneur, you had to get scrappy. And what you're saying about leveraging all types of resources. I mean, I built a CRM. I found an open source platform and I built the CRM for my fledgling online advertising business so that my sales reps, because I'm still thinking like a corporate person, even though I'm an entrepreneur, right? So I need to be able to see their productivity. I need to be able to track our progress. How successful were we with different plays? All the things that I wanted to be able to have some of the structure that I need, that's readily available in corporate within my realm as an entrepreneur. But that meant that I had to teach myself a lot of things. That meant I need to be able to pivot. That meant I need to be able to do every job in my business, whether that's inside sales, sales rep, marketing. I needed to be able to do it because I had an expectation of what I wanted, how our company needed to show up. And so being able to self-direct and self-learn, whether that's no matter what, that's a skill that'll serve you in any capacity. Being able to pivot, having a growth mindset, self pep talks. When I was younger in my career in corporate, just like when I was an entrepreneur, there are times where you hit a wall, where you're on a learning edge, as my coach likes to say, and those are uncomfortable. So how do you respond? Do you pull back and say, maybe I can't do this? Or do you burst through and talk yourself into, I can grow, I can change, I can continue to develop? And that's so important. I think the main motivator for me overall is just curiosity. What can I do? How can I help? And one thing you said before, when, going from manager to director to, when I came out of college, I probably shouldn't share this publicly, but I'm going to anyway.
Can't wait.
Keep in mind that I was an actuary, okay? But I had a spreadsheet that was a 7-year plan for my life, right?
Oh, God, that's organized. That's pretty
that
organized.
is who I am, right? And I had timelines of what I wanted to have happen. And then maybe I hit the first 2 and then everything went out the basket, right? I was switched from procurement to IT. I did a SAP implementation. I mean, it was just totally different than this plan that I had. And what I've come to value more than a plan, I still set goals, is performance. I want to have an impact. And how can I have an impact in this moment, in this place, not later, but now, today? How do I leave where I am better than I found it? And what skills can I add to my toolbox in this experience? Whether that's starting a business, whether that's shutting down a business, whether that's being a new mom or twice mom, having a second kid, which is a whole other, as experience, or whether that is walking into my boss's office to pitch a business idea that let me go and create a new organization. It's leaning into thinking about where and how I want to make an impact, lean into curiosity, and then leveraging that toolbox.
I love that, Etosha. I think that's all great. And, another thing I want to hit on is when we talk about taking, leaps and having new experiences, it's really about us as the whole person. So one of the things that's really important to me is making sure that I have balance. And I don't always get it. I don't always get it right. But I feel that I am a better leader when I take time for Kathleen, when I have the right time for my family, and I have my time for work. And it's the balance across those different areas and what I learn from the different areas of my life. So, I typically start by not only saying what I do at work, but also that I'm a mom and I've been married to my husband. So I'm mom to 2 kids, Victoria, who's 11, and James, who is 8. And we just had a big pirate birthday party on Saturday to celebrate him. And I've been married to my husband, Mark, who's British, we celebrated 20 years last year.
Congratulations.
Now, these different experiences, like being a mom was a leap for me. I never wanted children. That wasn't in the plan. And then when I turned 35, all of a sudden my biological clock started ticking and I was like, oh my gosh, I want children. So, but that whole experience of like actually being a mom, not just to 1 child, but then to 2 child, and balancing a career and balancing being a mom. My husband and I, he's a stay-at-home dad taking care of the kids, but kids still need their mom. But there's so much I've learned about how from my children and those, when they were young, and even now when my daughter's starting to get up into those tween years, that I bring to my work environment as well. And a lot of it about interpersonal relationships
Absolutely.
and priorities, but then also learning from the way that I spend time on me and my mindset. I start my day most days, I exercise 5 days a week. I'm a big runner. In addition to that, I like to garden. But doing things like that helps me set myself and set a foundation for, a good day. And I think that those are things that I've brought into my career as well. And like having this right foundation of the balance of the things that I need to bring to my team, to my company every day, to really help to drive success in a way where everybody can be their authentic self at work and create an environment. Hey, we spend so much time at work. It needs to be a place where also people can thrive and feel like they can take a leap. Let me pause there, Tasha.
No, I agree. And I think maybe we pivot here about what keeps us from taking a leap, right? Because if there's some of you here that are interested in moving into entrepreneurship or moving out of entrepreneurship, are changing roles, are changing companies, a lot of times I'll speak for Etosha. I won't speak in generalities. The saboteur is real for me. And I have to guard against her because she's really smart and she can press my buttons and really get me spun up in my head about what I can't do, why I shouldn't do, why I'm not ready for, and if I let it, it would hold me back. In fact, a quick story, a VP role opened up when I was in a customer facing role, and I had been the managing director. For us, managing director was under VP in this team, and I would love my role. I was like, Robin to Batman, right? So it is perfect because I can influence Batman, but I don't have the weight on my shoulders. And so this role opened up and I sat and I gnawed over it and I thought about it and I wanted to go for it, but I'm not ready. And how can I be a mom? Because how can I be the mom I want to be if I take this job? And what if I fail? And every saboteur thought you can imagine. And what I wasn't leaning into was, what would I bring? I would be lying if I said every time I took a leap, I did so with full confidence. In this case, I had a male colleague of mine who I'll proudly name Taylor Sessions, who gave me a call and said, hey, are you applying for that job? And I was like, well, I've been thinking about it, but I don't know. And he basically said, if you don't apply for that job, I am going to come and kick your behind. He said, you are ready. You are ready. And I don't know why you haven't put your name. I'm calling you it was maybe 3 days later. He said, I'm calling you today, tomorrow, until you apply for that job, and listen, at least get it to where they offer you the job. And if you feel like all of these other concerns you have, then say no, but go for it. And true to his word, he called me. I did apply for the job. I did interview for the job. And that's when I was promoted to vice president. And I don't know that I would have, maybe I would have. I was sitting on the fence, I had a saboteur in my ear. And so for anyone out there, this is what I would tell you. There's no leap you can't come back from. Even if you make a choice that turns out not to be one that's fulfilling for you, think about what you can learn in that choice while you figure out your next move. Don't let fear paralyze you, right? Don't let the saboteur keep you from continuing to grow. because every leap is a growth opportunity, whether that's one that you deem successful or not. You will walk away changed. You will walk away fuller, more robust, more experienced. And that in and of itself is priceless. I don't know, Kathleen, if you want to add, hopefully you don't have the same saboteur in your ear at times that I do.
Oh, I think we all, well, I can't speak for everybody else, but I absolutely have some of those saboteurs for me. And, for me, when I was, and I say earlier in my career, but hey, even as executive leaders, sometimes people think that we don't get worried about these things and we always know the right answers. We have the same concerns that at least for myself, I can speak to you. I have to put my own saboteur, and what I tell my team is like, whenever I have a bad thought, I crumple it up into like a little piece of paper, and I imagine I throw it into a wastebasket in my head. And if it's not something I can do something about or something that's helping me, I kind of put it in its place. But for me, one of the things that I had to learn early on is I was always afraid of doing something wrong and being wrong and making a mistake and saying the wrong thing. And how would everybody feel about me if I made a mistake or if I said the wrong thing? Well, what I didn't tell myself was, what about that leap? Not what if you're wrong, what if you're right? So then when I started, it took some courage, and I actually had a really good mentor who, worked with me on believe in yourself. You need to take the lead. You need to be speaking up in meetings. And what I found was, just like anything else, it takes practice. Having that confidence that, no, I'm not 100% expert on this topic, but I'm probably 70%. And you know what? I know more than anybody else sitting around this table. So if they throw a question at me, I can come back because I know a lot about this. And hey, what if I'm wrong? It's okay to be wrong. I don't know, it's something I had to unlearn, that, we talk about failing fast. We talk about you're not innovating and you're not trying new ideas if you don't actually do something that doesn't work, because you learn from it. So, those are some of the things that I had to get comfortable with. And how do you get comfortable with that? I think that is something that is different for everybody. For me, some of that comfort is, we talked about curiosity. I like to be prepared. I just know that about myself, like even for this meeting today, you and I have prepared for this, but it's like within me, like I have confidence when I feel prepared, when I know about different things. So I research it. So for me, like doing that research, getting prepared, prepares me for different leaps. For other people, they're willing to just take the leap, and that's good. But I just want to I acknowledge that what makes you feel comfortable about doing new things, exploring new things, is going to be different based upon your personality. And that's something that I think is really important too, is knowing yourself. And knowing yourself at a really deep level, to know what motivates you and what makes you happy. For me, I'm happy when I'm learning and when I'm going to try new things. Yeah. And sometimes I often have people ask me, when do you know you're ready for your next role? Or when are you going to start exploring your next role? Well, for me, it's when I'm not learning anymore. If I'm not, if I can do the job with my eyes closed, then that's not exciting to me. Then I need to look and find other things to help me feel comfortable with, for other areas where I'm actually, learning and continuously taking leaps. Because I do think taking a leap is not let's just leap from this job to this job. There are daily leaps that you can take, or little leaps that you can take in your career. I don't know if that resonate with you, Etosha.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, absolutely. And it's from everything, right? Gosh, I could take this all kinds of ways. I can think about when I was at Capital One. I left I left SAP, where I was GM of a business, and I went to be head of sales for treasury management for the commercial bank. Totally different industry, different role. And of course, okay, can you really lead a sales team? And it's interesting, right? One of the reasons why I made this leap was I felt in my role at SAP that, I'd reached a place where I did not feel like I was growing anymore. I was responding. Yep, I know, I got it. You can tell me I have a plan. I have a plan. I have a plan. I can see, I can assess, right? I'm not growing. I'm sort of responding. I'm looking at my toolbox. I'm looking at past experience. And I thought, gosh, I'm really good at this job. I'm a subject matter expert in this space. But am I a good leader? Right? Am I a good leader because of what I know or because I'm a good leader? So what if I just throw myself into the unknown? Could I still lead at this level? And so I would say that I proved to myself that I can, but there was also, I had to face, like we were talking about, that doubt. And for me, you said everybody gets over it in a different way. For me, it's taking that next leap. I'm here. So what do I do next? Taking the next step, believing in myself. And believing in myself through action. I have the tools. I can pull out these tools. I can use what I know. I can set a direction. I can assess if that direction is going where I want it to go. And I can change. I'm not locked in. And that's the thing that when I talk to many different striving women, one of the things I think we sometimes suffer with is, well, one, we're hard on ourselves.
We are, we absolutely are.
We are hard on ourselves. We want to have every box checked before we leap, and you don't have to. Listen, you don't have to. You can learn, you can still grow and perform at a high level while you're acquiring skills. People do it all the time, trust me. I think the other thing too is that we have to get comfortable that saboteur will come up. And
Right.
Right, it's going to come up. And so now, as I have a coach that tells me, don't let that become a diversion, a distraction, because then that'll take you away from the energy to move forward. So now, when I have those moments, I acknowledge the concern. I hear you, saboteur. I acknowledge the concern, but we're going this way. And because the worst thing that can happen is that I have to pivot. And I know how to pivot. I've shown it. I've proven it. And so earlier in my career, I think those little leaps onto this project, raising my hand to work with the engineers to learn about quality assurance that had nothing to do with my customer facing job, all of those little leaps, those daily leaps, as you said, gave me confidence that says, I know how to react, right? I know how to think. And so those wins are just as big as the big leaps, right? And the other thing I would tell you, the audience, as you're thinking about taking a leap, right? A couple of thoughts. One is, if you are interested in being an entrepreneur, I have to tell you, you have to get yourself comfortable with the unknown and that voice of the saboteur, because that's the world you live in, right? And the more that you can understand that will be there, acknowledge it, but keep pushing forward, the more peace you'll have, right? I will never, I cannot underestimate how hard peace is when you own your own business, and that constant concern about keeping it going. So I appreciate that. I know what that's like. The other thing I would tell you is bet on yourself. Everything that you're learning and doing is valuable, no matter the capacity, whether it's corporate, whether it's entrepreneur, whether it's being a stay-at-home mom. There are lessons in everything you do that can help elevate and accelerate success in the next arena, right? So bet on yourself that you can pull those skills, those experiences out when needed to continue to contribute, however you choose to do so. And then I think I'm going to leverage something Kathleen said, which is use your resources, books, mentors, I read all the time, right? So whatever, I read, like the Wall Street Journal. I have little newsletters delivered every morning because I like the little tidbits, and it helps me jog new ideas and creativity. Use what's at your disposal to continue to feed your curiosity and to build that toolbox. So Kathleen, I'll turn it to you as I'm just thinking about things that I would say as we're getting closer. I think closer to our time. I don't know if we have the opportunity to answer questions, but anything else you would say to the women in possibly gentlemen who are listening to us today?
Yeah, I think one of the things I do want to touch on our last 10 minutes here is women in technology, and women in technology, we are both, leaders in an industry that typically is more male dominated. And we're making progress, but we still have a long way to go. And one of the questions I often get asked is, what does it take to be a woman in technology? How have you done that? And my answer back is, this is my typical answer, is I don't think of myself as a woman in technology. I think of myself as a leader in technology. And taking down any story you may tell yourself, your saboteur, that, you're a woman and you shouldn't, be a leader in a technology company. I don't tell that story to myself. I remember, one of my very first experiences when I realized I actually was a woman in tech is when you're in fashion, it's basically all women, like men are, at least, way back 30 years ago when I was in fashion, there were more women in the room than what there were men. There were men. And one of my first roles many years ago was my first day on the job. And I went into a meeting room and there were about 30 guys and me. And I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? They looked at me, I looked at them, and we were both all of us were like, oh man. So, some advice that I give to I'm going to say leaders in technology is the same skills that we talk to men about developing on leadership skills, they apply to women. I'll bring it back to the confidence. Sometimes we're afraid to take that leap, or we think there's a reason why, we shouldn't be there. It's coming back to having confidence in yourself when you're a woman in technology. I also often get asked about being a woman in technology is, how do you do it? How do you create that balance between being a mom, being a leader, being a wife, staying true to yourself? And I think this applies whether you're a mom or not, is what helps me being a good leader is setting boundaries, setting space. So, my team knows that I shut off at a certain time in the evening, basically from 6 till 8 o'clock is kid time. That is protected time unless there's an absolute emergency, because I'm a better leader when I'm a good mom, when I spend time with my kids. But nobody else is going to set those boundaries for me.
Right.
I have to set the boundaries. I have boundaries for myself. Like I said, I work out every morning. It's rare that I will take a 6 a.m. call, because 6 to 7 o'clock is when I do my workout. So those are some of the things that have helped me as a woman in tech. Etosha, I don't know if you have any, I'm sure, I know you do. If anything you want to share that's kind of helped you be successful as a woman in technology.
Sure. I think the first thing, and actually it even started before, I'll tell a quick story. When I started at Procter & Gamble in procurement, I worked with this woman named Jane, who was in engineering for P&G. And Jane, so when I started, this is a long time ago, and you still had a dress code. So like women had to wear pantyhose to work. And there was a dress code in our employee handbook. So that's how long ago it was, but don't tell anybody. But there was a lady named Jane that was older than me. She was probably at that time, maybe I'm in my early 20s, and she might have been in her mid 40s. And Jane wore button-down shirts and pants every day, in blue and white, in very, I would say professional colors, not bright orange. And so I had a conversation with Jane maybe a year and a half in, and I asked her about what was it like being at Procter & Gamble when she started. And she said to me, Etosha, I sacrificed my femininity for success, because I was almost always the only woman in the room. And she says, when I see women like you walk in, I want you not to do that, which is why I wear bright colors and earrings and jewelry. I mean, I've scaled back a little than when I was younger, but I took her advice. So I share that to say, though she told me that less than 2 years in my career, it probably took me until my 30s, my mid 30s, to internalize that I did not have to soften or change who I am. You know, I tried to be less Etosha because I was often the only person of color or the only woman in the room when I moved over to tech. And so it took me a while to be okay with the fact that I'm going to hug you. It took me a while to be okay with the fact that then that's me. Not everybody's that. I'm an extreme extrovert.
I'm a hugger.
Right. You know, like sometimes if I'm frustrated, I'm going to cry. I will. And I'm sorry, but that's who I am. And I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm not doing it in front of you, but that's how I release frustration. And it took me a while to accept that. It took me a while to be okay with the fact that I'm going to always think about the people first, their hearts and their minds first, because that's who I am. I'm not going to think about the numbers first. I will get there and I understand it clearly because I'm an actuary, right? But it's not the way I always process of how we need to move forward. But that's my goodness. That's what I bring to the party. That's the angles, the pieces that if I weren't sitting there, would make the plan less robust, less comprehensive. And so once I gave myself permission to be a woman in tech, then I'm able to really bring the elements that shape the diversity that I bring, that gives the experience and the perspective. So it is that's what I had to do. I had to give myself permission to not have to fit a mold and to just be me. And I found that once I freed myself from trying to fit somebody else's place, you know, my commodity, my value of me as a commodity rose because I could really live and breathe and bring the authentic pieces of me that shape a different point of view. And that I think enhances the collective. And that's not just limited to women, right? That's all of us. And it's something I work really hard at in my organization, creating a space where people can do that. So I know we're coming close to time, Kathleen. Shall we open it up for questions? If there are any questions, please put it in the chat. We would love to take your questions and hear from you.
Yeah, and Tasha, I'll just say, I really love that on your bringing your femininity, if that's the right word, but
Yep.
really it's about your authentic self. And I think that's where it's so important for each of us to know ourselves, because Kathleen as a leader is different than Natasha as a leader, which is different than Mary as a leader, you know, and Cheryl as a leader. We all have our own authentic self on really what brings out, you know, our leadership skills and makes us really, really great leaders. So I know we're, I don't have access to the chat, so if there's any questions.
Okay, I don't see any questions yet. I thought I saw a hand raised earlier, but I wasn't able to respond to it. But if there are any questions about that we can give insight into about taking a leap in the company to a different company, from corporate to entrepreneur, from entrepreneur to corporate, we'd be glad to give any advice, share any insight that we have. And if not, I don't see any. I want to be sure I'm looking in the right place, though. Let me just look.
No open questions. I don't see any.
Yep.
Okay, so, you know, just coming back to where we started on taking a leap, Tasha, you know, this has been a great conversation. I really want to thank you for sharing all of your great insights on your career history. And some of the things that I hope the audience got from this session is that your journey is your journey and it can change, and it's okay for it to change. And you own your journey. And even if you don't have the technical training or the skills, as long as you are curious and you have the faith and confidence in yourself that you can do it, that you know that there's also going to be so many others that are on that path that are going to be there to help you, you know, if you raise your hand and ask them for it. So, you know, my final, you know, words of advice to those of our audience is to believe in yourself, have confidence, and stay curious. So Etosha, anything that you'd like to leave as your final thoughts?
Sure. Let me just say, Alicia, I see your question about grants. I'm not an expert in this area, but let's do some research and see. I have been part of boards, though, that where we went and looked for grants to help start businesses. I'm more familiar with the SBA. I took out a loan, whether that's good or bad, versus having a grant. But let's see if we can get you some resources after the session to help you with finding grants for your business. The thing that I would leave the audience with is something I say to my organization. You know, there is greatness within each of us, right? Each of us has gifts, skills, experience that creates a uniqueness that, when activated, brings greatness. And what I strive for is figuring out how I can tap into my greatness in whatever situation I'm in, right? And when I'm thinking about the pursuit of my next step in my career journey, which I just think is a life journey, really.
Yes,
It's about how, right? You know, because it's true. You bring all these aspects and it's, you spend so much of your time in whatever you're choosing to do to employ, you know, yourself, right? But the things that I would share with you is, no matter where you are, before you take that leap, think about, what do I want to contribute? What impact do I want to make? Is this the impact, the legacy I want to leave with this next leap, right? If you answer yes, I can make an impact. Yes, this is the place I want to leave my footprint, my fingerprints and my footprint. Then the next thing I would do, as I'm assessing that leap, is, what skills am I going to use right off the bat to help me start in this journey? And then what do I want to pick up that's going to be my gift to take away? So I can think about those two things, because one allows me to have comfort in what I'm bringing, and the other allows me to leverage curiosity so that I'm taking something away when I go. And so I would tell you to silence the saboteur. Understand the impact, the goal of why you're doing it. Look at what you're bringing to the party from the beginning, and think about what you want to take away, add to that toolbox in the end, and then close your eyes and leap.
And leap, I love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, again, this has been so great. Thank you, Etosha, and thank you to everybody in our audience. So looking forward to hearing about all the great leaps that our audience is going to take.
Absolutely. Have a great day, everyone.